SIIC began this program in October 2021. This was launched with the only vision of helping our incubated startups onboard an expert, an able mentor, a guide, or a coach who can propose solutions to the problems faced during your entrepreneurial journeys. Under this program, I have been able to successfully onboard 60 plus top-notch mentors from the academia industry till date. They cover all the areas like agriculture, IoT, AI/ML, cybersecurity, healthcare domain, defense, manufacturing, etc. In a year and a half, this program, we have been able to help 30 plus companies onboard a mentor and fetch the solutions they required during their product development journey. So as I shared with you earlier that we have Mr. Vaibhav Lodha with us. He's a very active mentor in our existing mentor pool. Vaibhav has been instrumental in escalating the growth of our very successful startup pool. Pool has been incubated with us. He's also currently mentoring 3 incubated startups, and they are very happy with Sir's mentoring. So I'd like to share a little bit about Mr. Lodha. He's an entrepreneur himself. He's a co-founder of FT Cash, a company which is dealing in empowering undeserved micro merchants in India through financial inclusion using digital payments and loans. FT Cash has been recognized as one of the fastest growing fintech companies in India by Forbes and is now supported by Facebook, PayPal, and MasterCard. Vaibhav has been awarded by MIT for the most innovative future of work in the field of financial inclusion. He has many feathers in his cap. Few that would interest all of us is that he has been the Achiever of the Year 40 under 40 by Business World and Entrepreneur Award by University of Tokyo and Takeda Foundation. As I said, he has a lot of feathers in his cap, so my time would fall short. So Mr. Lodha, now the floor is for you. This is a closed door session. We have few companies who would like to ask questions after your session is over.
Sure. Thank you so much, Vatsala. Always a pleasure to come back. Hello, everyone. My name is Vaibhav. Like Vatsala said, I'll keep this session as interactive as possible. Do you think the participants will be able to speak to me, or it's a one-way communication right now?
It's a one-way communication right now. Rishabh, can we open? Can we let the participants unmute themselves and ask questions, or should I take it up through the?
Yes, we can allow.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. So today's session is about storytelling, and among the startups that I've mentored so far, I've realized that the first piece that we actually start working is on creating the story of your company itself. So one of the things that I've seen with a lot of companies, especially the ones that are incubated at IIT, that people are exceptionally talented. They have done really interesting problem solving. You've also done a lot of thinking behind how to solve your problem and what technical solution you need to follow for it. But I think one of the areas where I felt short, where I think justice is not done a lot of times, is when it comes to actually explaining that problem and creating a story around it, weaving that as a pitch, if I may. Right now, this is where I feel some of you require just a structure. Because if I just ask you to create a broad script, right, that he can just make it like what you feel from heart, etc., it's very general. I wanted to at least create a broad structure in your mind so that you can follow that structure to say that, okay, at least at a basic level, this structure will help me create my story better, right? So what I'll do today is I'll run you through a pitch that I got inspired from back in 2014-15 when I started my entrepreneurial journey. It's a very old pitch. The reason I keep showing that pitch and I continue to believe in that pitch particularly is one, because it's a company which is based in Israel, has a very simplistic structure to show what it needs to. So it doesn't have an Indian context. So this will also allow you to understand that a pitch which was made in Israel was also able to transcend borders and was actually able to come to India and still explain what they're doing, right? So your pitch also should be in a way that it doesn't have any assumptions. It is able to explain everyone and anyone, whether be in India or outside, explain what you do and how you do it, right? And that to me is one of the very key roles. Now, I will also tell you what were the shortfalls of this, shortcomings of this pitch, because no pitch is perfect. There are always like areas to improve. I think there are areas to improve in the area where even I do pitches and storytelling. So there is always a way to improve. The only way to improve is by giving more and more storytelling sessions, by like either doing it with your colleagues, your friends, family, and also going out and explaining your same business to your customers, to your investors and other potential partners. Because each time you do it right, one of the things that will come is they will ask you a few questions. What you need to do is take those questions down so that you know that, okay, my pitch or my story is not solving for these questions. I need to incorporate this in my story. Obviously, there's a time and place for everyone. So some stories need to be a minute, some stories need to be 5 minutes, some stories could be 15 minutes. So if you're giving your presentation to an investor or a potential partner, your story could be 15 minutes. If you're giving a story to somebody who's just meeting you at a conference, maybe less than a minute is very important, because they don't want to be bored. Let them ask for more questions, right? And I think that is the differentiation that you need to understand, that what is the duration I want to go for? How much do I want to share? A lot of times I've seen people just go on and on, just like when I ask you, how are you? And suddenly you start telling me that, oh, my day has been like this and I've had this issue. I've just asked you for a simple, how are you, right? So you have to understand the situation in which the question is being asked and answer accordingly, right? So I'll go through the pitch with you and let's begin that part. I think the mics would be on for you guys now. So if you have any questions, feel free to stop me and ask me in the middle itself, so that it's easier to like do that problem solving while we are at it, rather than like trying to do it at the end. Obviously, there'll be enough time at the end to be able to discuss question answers as well. And obviously, then we can discuss any specific questions that you have regarding your own storytelling and pitch as well, right? So this starts with the first slide. Now, in this case, they've used a scooter, right? Now, you'll ask why the scooter. Now, the thing is, they're basically in their, this is a pitch about a payments company, but they don't want to start with just a payments, because payments is a very boring product. Like it has no factor to excite somebody, right? So they start off in this case just because they're able to explain their own heritage, their background. So what you can do is, the first picture that you use in any of your slides can, one, be about any story that you relate to. Like when you're solving a problem, what does that relate to you? So for example, when I was creating our pitch, I created a slide which had the pitch or the picture of my newspaper vendor at the time, right? Because it was a story about that newspaper vendor that went on for the whole duration. And then I closed in with that newspaper vendor itself, that, okay, this newspaper vendor became my customer. So that's one way to do it, that you start with an individual or a persona that actually inspired the entire process of this company formation. Or you just take one example of any of your customers who you feel you're helping. That's one. The other one is any personal story that you have about the company itself. So one of the other times when we created the story or pitch, we also used Golden Gate Bridge, which was based in San Francisco. The reason being, we wanted to show that that bridge had a certain budget. That budget fell short, and they were still scrappy enough to be able to make the entire bridge through very limited funds. And that is the story that we represent in our own company also, that we've not raised so much funds, but we're still able to run a successful, profitable company with limited amount of funds. And that's the story what we wanted to replicate from there. So these, I often say, these are things that are cocktail conversations that stay with people when they're there, right? Imagine this way, that when each time a presentation is starting, right, you could be very easily bored saying, ki, yaar, ye kya hai? Abhi kuch, koi बहुत लंबा चौड़ा बोलेगा. But if you start with something that people don't know about, it could be something, an inquisitive question. Oh, by the way, do you know how many people die on every day on road accidents, right? And that's just a question that people might not know. Or did you know, like there is one of the companies that I mentor where like we initially started with a picture of a Kathak, and we said that, do you know which state Kathak belongs from, right? And when you ask people this question, right, most people don't know it's actually from UP and Lucknow, right? And suddenly that becomes a thought that, oh, I didn't know that actually Kathak came from Lucknow. And that is a very small question that people can carry back home, and then they remember your presentation as well. So this starting point is very important, just because this will become an interesting part for people to take it back home also. Also, one of the things that you can do when you're starting out is give your own introduction. It's very important to explain what background you have before going into and launching into your pitch. Because when you've given a background, right, a lot of times people have these small questions that why should I listen to this person? Those questions actually come to rest. They're able to then understand, okay, who are you? Where are you coming from? What's your journey been? And then that validation allows them to listen to you better, right? So I think it's very important to just be able to give us brief background about yourself. It could be anything less than a minute, and that should be fine, right? So I think that is one. Apart from that, it could also just be a story which is so powerful, which represents a business very well. Like if you're trying to solve, for example, plastic waste. So if you had shown a picture here of full of sea of plastic, right? Like endless plastic waste somewhere, that picture will stay with that person. And that's why I'm saying this importance of this picture here, because it just needs to stay with the person when they are looking at that presentation, that, oh, wow, this is what is being solved. So just that part is important. The other thing is you'll also notice that there is a small line written here. That tagline is important to just help you understand that what is the business proposition trying to do. You can have it, anything less than 5 words is acceptable, it's good, but don't make it a whole sentence. Anything less than 5 words just allows you to tell the category, tell the business what you're solving, but just less than 5 words, right? So I think let's start with this from here. Now, the second part or the second slide comes to the vision of the company. Now, vision of the company has a very clear impact on the work that you're trying to do as well. Vision usually means that you're trying to say something that is almost impossible to achieve. So if in my case, if I say that we're trying to bring financial inclusion to 60 plus million micro merchants in India, right? I know that that's an impossible ask, but that's a vision. Like you're working towards it. Nobody is asking you to solve the entire vision 100%, but your vision will allow you to have an infinite long period, because vision statements are not made for like 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. They're made for a much longer period. So it's a very strategic question you need to ask. So a few things about the vision statement when you start. One, just make it a point to make it less than 10 words. Very important. It can't go beyond 10 words because it starts to lose meaning there, right? So 10 words, just keep that in mind, like keep that there. Second, it should start with a verb. So in this case, you'll see it says empowering. You could say supporting, you could say crystallizing, whatever, like something that your product and your service is doing. It should start with that verb. Again, a very important part. Then when I speak about the unachievable goal, right? This one says empowering the underserved merchants with the power of with the power of mobile payments, right? Now, underserved merchants, there are a lot of merchants, and it's not even saying the area. So you can, if you want, if there are words left for you, you can choose underserved merchants, micro merchants in India, or you could remove the word sector here. I'm saying all that is allowed, but at the same time, be specific what you want to do. So if I had to write on my own vision statements, I would say empowering 60 plus million micro merchants in India with financial inclusion. Now, when it's a broad enough statement, right? So even if I'm doing lending today, and when I write financial inclusion, tomorrow, if I include insurance in it, it can get included there also. If I add wealth management or digital payments, all of that can be included in my work if I write a broader word of financial inclusion. And that's the impact I'm trying to create for my work. Don't be very specific about about the actual issue you're trying to solve, because it needs to be an impact on the society, not the small problem that you're trying to solve. So if you're trying to solve something in say plastic eradication, right? Then you say that trying to eradicate plastic waste of so and so million tons across the country to create a healthier living environment, because that is what you're trying to do. You're not saying that, oh, I'm basically making sure that this locality has better plastic control. No, because your vision has to be much bigger. So now we come to the point of understanding the problem statement, right? Now, in this, you basically explain how big is the problem statement that you're trying to solve. What is the problem statement that you're trying to solve, right? So this basically states that as mobile payments are booming, 1.4 trillion by 2017, 50 million businesses are still untouched by progressive technology, micro merchants, right? Now, what it has done in one simple line is that it has given you the size of the problem. It has given you the size of the merchants or businesses that are impacted by it. And it has also broken this down for you that, okay, how many of these businesses are there in which segment, right? You'll observe one very interesting thing here. This slide does not have more than 30 words in total, right? And this will be a consistent theme that we will see across, that the moment you start writing too many sentences, right, the meaning of the presentation of the slide dilutes. Try to include as many as pictures, these graphics as possible, because they help ease the listener into actually looking at the slide. They are able to take away things better. If you have too many things, too much text, it becomes impossible to read it. So I would say 30 words is a very high number also, like to keep on a slide, but just try and keep it at that across any slide. So unless you're going into an appendix slide where somebody has a specific question and you're trying to answer that in appendix, that's different. But if it's any of the first 10, 15 slides, try to keep that text under 30 words. That's my golden rule here, typically. Now, this number, a lot of people also find it like hard to come to this number. They try to figure out, how do I get this number? Their market research is available on those numbers. There are sometimes, like in your business, you're not able to find how big that segment is. What you can do is you can take a broad segment. For example, if you're looking at like a site that does, I don't know, gaming, video games for small kids, right? You're like, oh, there's the entire, like, I don't have this segment or size available. The idea is you can say that, okay, you know what, the entire segment of the country is divided into video games, the industry. You'll find that number for video games is a $500 billion industry. Considering that the teenagers who exist in this space are about, say, 25%. So I'm going to say that, okay, out of the $500 billion, $125 billion are the actual ones that in my target audience. And that's your overall business opportunity. One thing important here is that bigger the business opportunity, the more it attracts the customers also. So I would very easily go with that. The second thing is explain your problem. Now, the thing is, you explain the market size. Now explain the problem, that why is somebody not able to solve your problem? Why is it that somebody has not cracked this issue yet? So then in this case, they're saying that, okay, you know what? There are multiple car terminals, but micro merchants are not able to access cash alternatives because the hardware is expensive, or it's tedious interface, or there's cash related frauds, or cashless consumers. Now they have given these percentages also in a very crisp manner. This allows somebody to understand that, oh yes, 50% of these customers are not able to figure out from an expensive hardware. So now if you're able to give them a cheaper solution, which will eventually come into, then more and more people will be able to look at this. They're also just giving an indication here that, you know what, see, digital payments is declining anyway. So might as well start moving in that direction where you think it's going to work, right? So again, you'll see a slide which has less than 30 words. So the way we started was, we started with the market, we started with the problem statement, and now we come to the solution. Here, what they have done is, when you're explaining the solution, look at this slide. It has very simple, just a picture which explains the solution in a very crisp manner. Again, it has just 3 things written. No cash credit card required, no cash registry required, no scanner or NBFC and NFC required. And above it's written very clearly that it enables digital payments between micro merchants and consumers in proximity. So when you have given this very simple interface and understanding, right, what it does, and with the picture, everything is almost automatically understood, and the visuals allow somebody to make it easier to get this. Now you could be in different areas, but using those pictures has a very powerful way of communicating your message also. Now what you can do is you can go into solutions which go into a slight more detail of explaining the features it has. But I have two important things to say here. One, never harp on the features that they are like the go-to thing, because features can always be copied. There is no feature which can become a moat, which is a moat is basically a USP that cannot be copied. So don't just harp on features, because features can be copied very quickly, but explain the features that you have, of course. That's one important thing. Also, don't go into too much technicality of the problem itself, that, oh, we're using this version of, say, PHP versus that version of PHP because this version is like 20% faster. If it has material impact on your business, please go ahead and explain it if it's that technical. But what happens is, a lot of times, if you're pitching it to an investor, or if you're pitching it to an audience who are laymen, who don't understand this, right, they'll be lost. And the thing is, you are giving as many chances to them to not listen to you. At each moment, they're trying to qualify कि मैं इसकी बात क्यों नहीं सुनूं. And you have to figure out that, okay, no, like my words are important, and that's why I'm measuring my words, what I'm saying. Okay. Then it just explains the process of this in a very seamless picture-based way with very limited words. It says you scan it here, you put in the amount, you make the payment, done. Now this allows somebody to visualize the solution also that way, the way you're doing it. This slide is not necessary that it will be there in all businesses, and it's okay. The way I've shown this is just to show that different businesses will have different presentations. This will have this slide, your business may not have it, and it's perfectly fine, right? Again, this is a text slide. In this business, it's required. If you have certain patterns, some technology, something that is IP based for you, if you have to explain it, please go ahead and explain it in a very simple line diagram type way, so that it's easier for somebody to assimilate that information. But if you don't have that, if it's, say, for example, a D2C business where you're selling just kachoris online, right? So then you don't need to have tech based. You just have a simple website and you're selling it there. That's fine. Right? Again, the components have the same thing, that their features, they can be there. If they're not there, don't worry about it. It's fine. One of the other things I've also seen people make a mistake about is that if they have 2 or 3 products, right, they're like, oh, I have this also, I have that also, I want to explain all of that. No. Please try and ensure that you find that one winner product. When you're trying to explain 2-3 products, right, you're taking away from the opportunity of explaining a winner product well. So please ensure that you're only talking about the winner product first. You can come back to the other secondary, third, tertiary products later, but please explain only the winner product. Because the moment you explain that properly, right, somebody is interested in you, they will try to know more. But if you don't, if you're trying to do across the two, right, then you will dilute both the messages. Now, this comes to a business model where it comes like just explains that, okay, this is how this is working. You'll see very seamlessly in just 2 lines. They've explained the very clear business model, that this is how we earn money. This is important because when you are able to show that your business earns money, people understand that, okay, this is how it works. Now, again, in business models, please just try to use the margins. And if it's transaction based, B2B, all of that, just explain that very simply so that somebody else is able to understand this is how you make money. But if you have a very complex way of saying, मैं B2B से इतना कमाऊंगा, मैं customer से इतना कमाऊंगा, मैं government से इतना कमाऊंगा, it just gets too confusing for someone. Explain where will you get 80% of your revenues from. That's easy. If you are trying to get 5% from a customer and 5% from government, it doesn't have any value. Right? This is a sales and marketing slide. In case if it's relevant for you, you can include it. I, as a business, don't include it. And this is also the reason I'm saying that, like, I don't include it, because a lot of times it's not relevant. If you have a very unique way of selling, If you have something that you are doing which nobody else is doing, or if your growth has been exceptional, then you explain it, but it's not always necessary. Competition is very important. Now, what happens in competition, right? A lot of people think that I will make my competition like in such a way that there's nothing around it. That's not the case. They will fill these 3 quadrants, but they will not fill anything in their quadrant, and they'll say that, oh, in my segment and in my area, there's no competition at all. It has 2 problems. One, if there's nobody in your quadrant, right, or if there's nobody solving the problem that you're doing exactly in that way, any partner or investor will be worried that something is wrong. Why is there nobody playing in this area? Is something off, right? Because even if Facebook has to show or create this presentation, right, at that point, they would have put Orkut and MySpace in this same slide. So they had competition, but they were much better than a competition. So just be mindful that you are honest about your competitive slide, because most people are not. And it's good to actually show competition. Don't show them in a demeaning way. If there's a competition which is much bigger, has done exceptionally well, keep that as a bigger logo rather than a smaller logo. Like in this case, PayPal is shown to be much bigger than what Sling is, and which is honestly done, right? Then you can explain the competitive advantages in either in the same slide or a new slide, just so to show how it's done. Now, I'll show you one feature that has been used consistently across this, and you'll start to observe this very interestingly. It's called the power of threes, right? Now, this is an important thing to remember. Then when you're trying to tell a story, right, you have to every time use the power of 3. By the way, there are 3 payment flows. You do this, and you do this. 3, it's done. People tend to remember power of 3s a lot more than any other number. The moment you get to 4, 5, 6, it sort of gets diluted. So 3s is very important across your presentation. This has 3s. You'll see this also has 3s. And you'll see that here also, they've used 3s here. Now, the moment this one has 4, right, you will see one of them is actually diluted. So try and keep your numbers to 3 wherever possible. It allows to capture the mind of the listener very clearly. It also allows you to emphasize on the points that you're trying to make a lot better, right? Again, you'll see a power of 3 here, that there is the company has given status. They've said that we have onboarded 300 merchants. This is the turnover we have, and this is the viral coefficient. It allows somebody to have a very simple way to look, oh, wow, this is how the company has done progress. It seeps that information very well. What they've also done is in a very nice way, they've put a lot of these awards just below, just to show that, oh, they also have this other validation. The thing that a lot of companies do, which I would also be open to recommendation, is sometimes just like putting some of these things in leaves makes it official and look nicer. So if you want to do that, please go ahead and use it. Like, I think it's a good hack sometimes. What they've also done is, apart from this, they have given a simple way of showing that, okay, we have done 3 months of pilot. We have 6 team members in our team. We have raised $300,000 of funding, and we have strategic partners. So this is the secondary information. This is not as important as this one, right? So this first information, they have kept it very bold, very big, so that it's easily readable. But the secondary information is kept below, because even if somebody doesn't know that they've done 3 months of pilot, it's an information okay to miss. But knowing that, okay, they have done 45,000 worth of transactions, that's a good information to have. But that's a very important information to have. What they've also done is, again, you can remove the secondary leadership team. I would recommend actually removing it. Typically, team should only have the co-founders when you're an early stage company, because what happens is when you have co-founders, right, investors are only investing in the co-founders of the company. They are not investing in the team. And I'll tell you why. Because a lot of times, the team members who are there in the team can come and go. They're employees. They might be highly incentivized and they might be highly interested, but at the same time, they're employees. The investor or the partner still taking a bet on the team, who are the promoters of the company, who are the founders of the company. So as long as I'm assuming that, yes, all of you are early stage companies, founders profile needs to be here. It doesn't necessarily need to be everyone else. And at the same time, you can give a few logos to show what pedigree you come from. If there's a good pedigree, then you should give those logos. Otherwise, what you can also show is how your experience is relevant to what you're building today, right? In this case below, they have given all the companies that they're kind of working with for infrastructure, finance, legal, just so that it also gives a confidence that this company is working with respectable or validated vendors. So when you have like an EY doing your financials, right, you sort of have an understanding that okay, things are going well, right? I think the company will be clean in their audits and financials at least. So now this is all like not so important. This capital requirement of financials, I would not keep it. You could directly come to the end slide. The only thing you can keep is typically just say how much fund you're raising and what are the 2 or 3 areas you're going to use it in. This detail is not required, by the way. So this allows you to have a very clear structure. Now, I'll tell you a few things that I would take away from this, which I feel is very important for you to remember. One is that the lesser the words, the more interesting the presentation is for the listener. It's also interesting for the other person to ask more questions as well to you. This is when you're explaining the presentation in person. An executive summary, which is like in a Word document type, is a different thing. This is not that. This is for you to be able to present it to somebody when they're speaking. Also, what happens is if it has less words, it allows the user or the person who's listening to actually look at you while you're speaking rather than reading what's written on the slide. A lot of times when you are speaking, right, the person is busy reading what's on the slide because they don't want to miss out. They don't know when you're going to turn the slide also. If it's less text, it's easier to know what that big text is that you want to read. Everything else is secondary. So just keep that in mind. Like I said, introduction of yourself and that personal story can make a huge difference in associating that of yourself with the problem that you're trying to solve as well. A lot of times personal problems don't associate to what you're solving, and that's also okay, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to be there, but you could still say that why you feel this problem is important, why you feel this problem needs to be solved according to you. And that also goes to show how committed you are to this problem as well. I've already explained the power of threes. Remember that, because I think one of the things that I've learned is that in an argument, if you have like say 7 or 8 or 10 arguments, right? Typically what happens is you should just choose the top arguments that are there, which are unbeatable. The moment you have top 5 arguments, but you have 3 or 4 okayish arguments, right? Because of the 3 or 4 okayish arguments, your remaining 5 also get diluted. But in the same case, if you have your top 3 or top 4 absolutely amazing arguments to say why you're doing this and what you're doing is the best, it stays with people. So try and compress your information as much as possible. It takes iterations, but that is how you're going to make it better, right? Please remove any extra jargon. So every single word in that presentation in your story needs to be justified. It needs to be sure that why this word needs to exist. Use of pictures, especially in presentations, is very important. This is a slide I was giving you, which is based on a slide. If you're creating a story, which is just in a simple word format, then the format that I would highly recommend you follow is a 7-way format. One is you'll start with the problem statement. So the problem statement would look like that, my newspaper vendor Pankaj has been trying to scale his business for many years, but he's not been able to do so because of lack of funding from banks lack of interest from banks to fund him. And at the same time, when he borrows money from money lenders, they charge him exorbitant interest rates. That's the problem that I've started with. Then you create a market, that how big the market is, because you've already explained the problem. And I think people understand that problem after that. Then you say that, oh, by the way, there are 60 million such micro merchants in India, and this is a $300 billion industry in the world, in the country. Suddenly people are like, wow. Oh, then you can explain that, oh, by the way, in this problem, only 3% of these merchants like Pankaj have access to capital today. So then you have given in the power of 3 again, you've given that how many merchants exists, how big that industry is, and how much penetration of these merchants have happened. it makes it so simple for somebody to understand that, yes, this is a big problem and it's very underpenetrated and very underserved. Then you come to your solution. So when you explain your solution, right, it just allows somebody to say that, oh, you know what, I now get it, that this problem has, this is how you solve this problem. Again, no jargon, very simplified way of showing what you're trying to do. The next slide, you can show the differences that you want to have. I think that's one important thing, that to show how you are different either from the existing competition or how you have differently solved this problem itself, right? So that's 4 so far. So we have explained the problem, we explained the market, explained the solution, we explained the differences that we have. The 5th we do is the business model, or how we make money. How much do actually we hope to make money as well, because that also shows that your business model actually has value. If you're saying that, oh, by the way, I'm creating this community and it'll like, we'll figure out a way later to make money out of it, it is not a good enough story. It could be a good Facebook page, but I'm not sure if it's a business model yet. I don't know if it's a story for a business yet. Today, what we're speaking is storytelling for a business, not just storytelling in general, right? Then the 6th element that comes is what progress you've made. I think the progress part is one of the critical elements to show that you are a little ahead in your journey, you are invested in this, you have made progress in this, and that excitement is there. So if you've had growth, which is exceptional, then show that growth. If you had IP, if you have team members, show that. If you have existing customers, show that. Anything that you feel you made work-wise progress, show that in progress. So that's item number 6. And the last one is credentials. Credentials are what is your team? Who's solving this problem? Are they the right people to solve this problem? Do they have the right partners to solve this problem? If they have investors, do they have enough money to like support them and to solve this problem? I think these 7 elements in this structure actually cover the entire spectrum of your story. You start with the problem statement. You start with the market opportunity, how big the problem is. You start with the solution. You create your differences. You show what your business model is, how you make money. You show what progress you've made. And lastly, you show why you're the right team to do it. I think these 7 pieces will solve any storytelling that you're trying to do. Right? So after this long monologue, I'll pause now. I'm hoping that there'll be some questions. So happy to take those.
Yes, thank you, Weber, for a very detailed and to the point guide for pitching. We have a few questions here.
Yes.
The first question is how to create exclusivity over fintech ideas in India, as business ideas cannot be protected as IPR in India.
Yes. So very good question. I think one thing to remember is that ideas are a dime a dozen. There are multiple ideas, multiple people solving those problems. A lot of times people would have started solving the problem before itself. And there is no exclusivity over an idea usually. Especially in fintech, it's very hard to create that because it's very, unless and until you have data of millions and billions of customers due to some reason that in some business you're in, or something that you've done in life where because of which you have that data, it's very hard to create that idea which is unique. That also doesn't stop anybody to copy that idea. What you can create differentiation through is your execution there. How fast you've grown, how well you're solving it, how good your strategy is. In fintech, for example, you could even the locations you're operating in could be a strategy. The customers that you're solving in the large segment could also be a strategy. I'll give you an example here. The newspaper vendor that I gave you an example of, right? Like when I was telling you the problem. Now that's a very micro segment merchant. But as we gradually start solving that problem, later on we realized that actually that level of merchants are harder for us to solve because they have no credibility in general in the market and the delinquencies are much higher. So we eventually went to retailers or shopkeepers who didn't have access to credit, but were much more stable in their business as well. And that allowed us to have a much higher growth. So keeping that is important. So just be mindful that your uniqueness could be from multiple things, but it's never from your idea because ideas can be copied and they're dime a dozen.
Thank you, Weber. The next question is, please let us know when pitching, how does one strike a balance between storytelling and conveying the necessary factual or technical information about the product or service?
I think that's a very important question. I think I'm glad that you asked that, because one thing is that I'm an engineer by background as well. I love my product. So I come from a storytelling of product itself, that my product has these many things it's trying to solve, or this solves this product so beautifully. Don't think about that. Start with what problem it's trying to solve. Please remember, the first point of any storytelling is what problem you're trying to solve. So when you start with the problem story, right? Problem statement, then when you come to solution after creating the opportunity, you will automatically start to see that when you explain your solution, right, that how it's impacting the user that is working with it, that to a layman, that works. And then in the differentiation slide, if you want to explain a little bit of technicality, that works. But going into a lot of technical details that, I'm using this particular chemical, which is very different, all of that makes it redundant for a normal user, right? Don't try to bore the other person, but rather be interesting or interesting enough for them to be interested in, right? So that way, for them, if they have questions that, oh, by the way, what material did you use, which is so good, like that doesn't do it, that question can automatically come. But if you give them a lot of gyan about like the product and like the specifications itself, then it doesn't work. And that balance has to be in the way that I showed you, that give 2 or 3 points about like technicalities if you have to explain, but your main line should be about the solution itself. And that should be the story part that you have to convey.
Yeah, very rightly said, Vaibhav. A lot of entrepreneurs are full of the solution they have. And so...
I've gone through the same mistakes a lot. Like because you love your product so much that you're just trying to explain that in very beautiful manner that, oh, I've done this also. But at some point you need to take the hard call to say that, okay, all this is jargon, it needs to be removed.
Yeah. Okay, the next question is, how can we adapt our storytelling or pitching to different audiences, such as technical experts versus non-experts or investors versus potential customers? Because I have found that all of them have different kind of expectations. So how do we do the customization while pitching?
So I'll give you a very simple way to think about this. The problem, market, solution, differentiation, business model, the progress, and the credentials, right? Typically, that is universal for everyone, right? That doesn't change person to person. The reason I'm saying that is because even if a technical expert is there, right? They will still have to understand what problem you're trying to solve. Now, if they're your technical mentor, maybe then you will avoid the business model part and like broad progress you've made or your credentials, etc. If you want to include that, please feel free. But they might want to understand your solution better. But in each of these areas, right, you will have to maybe focus on one thing over the other. For example, if you're explaining it to a technical expert, you might go into the details of all the beauty of your products and their differentiations and how different they are from everybody else when you're showing it to a technical expert. When you're showing it to a potential investor, like I said, like the structure is great. You also show how much money you're trying to raise. Showing growth, the scale that you have achieved is very important. Potential customers also are trying to understand that how it works in their company. So for them, again, understanding solution and its application within their company is very important. Over there, actually in the customer segment, maybe explaining problem doesn't have to be very important because they probably already know the problem statement, right? So again, just use the 7 structure approach. Based on who you're pitching to, you may choose to expand one over the other. So I would say that if I had to explain it to an investor, I will go with explaining the problem and the market opportunity a lot more. I will keep the solution very simple. I will not go into too much technicality about the solution because a lot of investors see all kinds of pitches, right? And at the same time, if you're trying to do it with an investor, you will also give a little more weightage to your credentials also, because speaking to investors is almost like marriage, where they're also trying to qualify you. And then you also have to qualify whether they're good investors for you or not. Maybe if you're explaining it to a customer, you've already given your background, you may not want to give like too much of details about your credentials also. So it depends, but this 7 structure approach does not change. Each of them, the components can be big or smaller, but they don't change as such.
Thank you. So the next question is, how can a startup differentiate itself and stand out from the competitors during a pitch?
I think I'm trying to understand this question a little bit more. During a pitch from competitors, like, are you saying that 2 or 3 competitors pitching in the same area?
Yeah.
Like, I think there your product will have to speak for itself, right? That's one way of me trying to think about it. But the second way is also how you explain the differences. So again, if you go back to the old structure, right, that we discussed, see, the problem will remain the same. The market will remain the same for your competitors. Now, I don't know what differences that are there in the solution. So obviously that could be a difference, that if you have any features, if you have any attributes which are different over the others, that could be a differentiation. If your business model or your approach to business is slightly different, somebody is using, say, SaaS model to do it, somebody is directly going to customers, that could be a differentiation. I don't know if that is there in your case. The progress you've made, again, can be differential. You may have reached an area where your team is 200 members versus somebody else whose team is only 20 members today. Again, differentiation there. And I think some bit of differentiation can exist in team as well, that a PhD student at IIT Kanpur running a deep tech company versus a BTech student running a company in the same area. Obviously, there'll be a difference, because somebody who's deep into that problem knows how to solve it better than somebody who's just coming out of it, right? So I think there's differences at every level. It's just that when you're in a competition, you need to understand that, okay, how am I better in which segment of these 7, which probably works out.
Yeah, a follow-up question for this is, how can a startup effectively showcase its team's expertise and capabilities during the pitch?
I think team's expertise, like I said, you can show the logos of the companies that companies or educational institutes that the team has worked at. That is important. Also highlighting some of the relevant experience, again, but very short, very brief. One thing that typically happens is when somebody is just starting a pitch or a dialogue, right, they tend to give an introduction about themselves. Now, that introduction could be very long, that you start from that, oh, I was born here, I have these many family members, or you can keep all of that short and then just come to the part where you said, this is how long I've been in this industry or solving this problem. And that will give people that wow factor, that, oh, okay, this person has been actually like working on this problem for a long time, so he knows what he's speaking about or she's speaking about. That, I think, to me, is a very important part.
Yeah. So the next question is, how much time and resource should a startup put in to create story against focusing on the product?
I don't know if there's a right answer to this, because I feel it's a business versus technical question. The thing is, both have to go hand in hand. Even if you created a beautiful product, but there's nobody to see it, it doesn't sell. And if you created a beautiful story, but your product sucks, that also doesn't sell, right? But one mistake I made actually when we were just starting out was that we were trying actually to go out in the market and just sell the story a lot more than working on our progress as much. This was very early stage, like way of like not knowing what is important, right? We like, okay, we'll get some money, then we'll continue to scale. But that is not what the investors want. They're like, keep your pedal on the gas, because we want you to continue to grow, even if you're doing fundraise or even if you're meeting potential customers. So don't move away from that. So I think if I had to think of a very early stage company, like if I had to take a hypothetical example here, if you're a pre-series A company, which has raised some seed money, but does not have like a lot of series A like money also, then I would keep about 60% of the time or 70% of the time in product and like customer service, and maybe 10 to 20% time on startup, like creating the story, because the story creation doesn't take time. It just takes revisions. So each time you pitched it to someone and they didn't get it, they got some part of it, you revise it. So I've written the entire story that we've given, for example, in a Word document, so that I can revise it every time. Each revision also has stored, so that I know how my story has also evolved over a period of time, right? So I think that works for me.
Okay, the next question is, I just want to know, like, can storytelling in a pitch be effectively practiced and improved? Or is it more of an innate skill? If it can be practiced, what exercises or strategies would you recommend? I am keen to know more about strategic pitch for defense sector because most of the time they need technologically superior product, but it uses to have it has small customer base and civic application.
Okay. So at the outset, right, I would say that this is not an innate skill, right? Even if you feel that you feel a lot more comfortable speaking in Hindi, English, just go with it. I would say just speak in the language that you're most comfortable in a pitch, because that allows you to be natural self, right? It doesn't have to be that, oh, you have to be a great orator to give a great pitch, but the easiness of which the way you simplify your pitch is very important. Not using jargon is very important, right? So I think it is something that you improve. Now, to ways to improve it, I was mentioning it earlier, that you can have 3 or 4 people. It could be mentors, it could be individuals who you really look up to in terms of entrepreneurs, or it could be potential friends or investors who you show a sample pitch to, you pitch it to them. Then they tell you that, oh, you know what, in the story, there is this bit of a flaw, try and change it. I'm not able to understand this part, right? And obviously try to do with different people. If there are people who are not from the industry, that's great, because they will not know anything about your sector, right? So they will ask you more basic questions, which is what needs to be asked also. So I think that's also an important piece to it. Since you asked about defense sector, right? I don't know if you're asking from a fundraise perspective or a customer acquisition perspective, but I'll just take an example of customer acquisition here, maybe, if that is the case. There, I think it's a government sell, right? So there, that personal connect matters a lot. Now, what happens is, a lot of times we go as businessmen thinking कि मैं एकदम मस्त pitch दूंगा और मेरा काम हो जाएगा, wherein just creating a rapport with the person before you start into your pitch, your deck and all of that. No, nothing. Just asking कि सर आप कहाँ से हैं, अच्छा आप क्या करते हैं, यहाँ से पहले क्या करते थे, like you get some conversation flowing, right? तो आपका जब pitch चल रहा है तब भी you are having a normal conversation, but it's not like a whole thing where you are saying, okay, good morning sir, now I will start my pitch, and then you go through the whole spiel. No, then you end up just having a conversation. So I feel in defense and stuff, like a lot of relationships matter as well, and which is what I feel you could work towards rather than anything else. If there's any specific question regarding this, maybe we can take it offline as well, but at least this is my answer for now.
Sure. A follow-up question to this is, let us know how can we use storytelling to create an emotional connection with our audience while still maintaining professionalism and credibility. Being a person having technical understanding of the product, and I have invested more than 12 years in research, while pitching, I used to be very emotional. So sometimes I think it harms my pitching.
I think it's a fair question. There is a very strong difference between empathy and sympathy, right? Now, what I'm trying to get to here is that in your approach, you need to show empathy, but not sympathy. And what that means is you need to say, I understand this problem and I'm here with them and I'm trying to support them, and this is my solution for them. But if you get intense about this, that, oh, I have spent so many years in this thing and I know how sad their life is, and I just wish I can do this, right? That's not the way. That's sympathy. So don't try to get sympathy, but try to gain that empathy. There is a video by Brené Brown which explains this concept on YouTube very well. There's a short video about this. She also has a book around the entire concept. It's Empathy versus Sympathy, Brené Brown. You should look it up. You will also understand what I'm talking about in terms of differences here, right? And that will allow you to say that, okay, how do I create that emotional connect without really becoming a crybaby of sorts, right? Like I don't want to be that. I still want to come across as professional. Now, the other thing I would also like to highlight is that being emotionally attached to your problem is a good thing. But at the same time, it should also come from a place of authenticity. It can't be for the sake of like getting the emotional uh, vulnerability of somebody else, right? It needs to have that, you know what, I saw this problem and I feel that there is something I need to do about this. But without that, I can't. And that's why I took this mantle up to actually solve this problem. I have been at it for say 12 years now, and here's my solution for it. Right? Then you bring into optimism that, okay, I saw this problem and I really felt like terrible about this, and I did something about it. And that shows optimism, that shows your grit also, that you are there to solve this problem.
Next question is, how can we use storytelling to demonstrate the unique value proposition for our product or service, especially in a crowded market?
Did we not discuss this?
Yes, we just discussed it earlier. So this has been done. One question is, how can a startup tailor its pitch to different audiences, such as investors, partners, or customers to maximize its impact?
Okay. I think we did cover part of this also, but
Yes.
There's one part I'd like to just add on here, because it's written like to maximize its impact. I would like to also say that in case if your company is an impact company, which also impacts life of others, right? So the way I'm talking of impact companies is every company is obviously solving a problem, it's doing some great work. That's why it's there in the market. That's why it's a business. But there is an incremental benefit of a 10-minute grocery delivery versus somebody who is eradicating plastic from the world, right? Like this is a big difference. So I would say that if you have impact in your work, then you can be very vehement, very open about it, and you can write that in your slide. That see, we have eliminated this much amount of waste, garbage, whatever. Like I've changed, like saved so many lives in the world, etc., through my product. And that's actually a very strong point to say to your customers, investors, anybody, because then you're able to say that this is the impact of my day-to-day work, and that's what helps me sleep every day. But again, if your company does not have that kind of impact, right? If you're selling just a normal, like if you're selling chips, then you don't have an impact. Like technically you're still selling food, but like it's not like a healthy food also in that direction. So in that case, you can have a little bit of that discussion that, okay, yes, this is a problem that we're trying to solve, but don't harp on the impact in that case. So just identify if you're talking about impact in terms of how you're impacting lives of people or climate or the world, versus like if you don't have that, then it's okay not to mention it.
Okay, so I have a question.
Yes.
Like many a times these companies share that while talking to their clients, they are being asked a question like how are they going to declare the product or this themselves as a like in the market, how are they going to declare that themselves? When is the right time to declare themselves? So how to answer this question?
What is declare themselves? I didn't follow
that. Like showcase their product in the market. When is the right time to showcase their product, and how should they pitch for it?
Shouldn't they show it like when it's ready, like when they feel it's ready?
Yes. So they feel stuck when it's asked from the other side of the table. They think that there is something else that could be answered when they're asked, like, is it the right time for your product?
No, but who asks? Customers ask this question.
Yes, customers are asking, even investors ask, is this when is the right time to showcase your product?
I've never been asked this question because I'm trying to understand. So you're saying a company has a product ready?
Yes.
And they go to a customer and they go to.
Yes. So many a times the investors ask, they feel that the time is not correct for the product to be launched in the market.
Investor to decide. See, if you're solving a problem, right? I feel very strongly as an entrepreneur that if you're solving a problem, it's your problem, it's your baby. It's you who decide when to showcase your product and take it out in the market. Any investor is just one person, an individual taking a call saying that, okay, this is what's going to happen, right? I can give you multiple examples where we've met investors back in 2015, 16, 17, who just said, oh, you know what, like these 3 companies will take over the entire world and then you guys will disappear and nothing will happen. And that's just one person's opinion. So you don't have to take it to heart saying that this is what it is and end of the world for me. Just take that, you know what, good point taken. If there's anything relevant for me here, I will take it. But I still have a strong conviction that my product is ready for deployment. So I will go out in the market to deploy it. Now, if that investor doesn't want to invest in me or this customer doesn't want to work with me, that's fine. But I'm sure there are other customers, there are other investors who are willing to work with me.
Yeah. So, because they feel that their confidence level goes down after such pitching sessions. So they wish to discuss.
I think here, see, that's why we having sometimes a coach or mentor, sometimes those things help, because then sometimes you just need like a little bit of the backing, that there is somebody at your back, like saying that, you know what, like it's okay. If they've said this, it's no big deal. These things are said, and like always don't expect the investors to know everything. They are not a subject matter expert on every possible subject. They might claim to do so, but they're not. Right? So just don't take that with a pinch of salt, so that you know that you're not taking it to heart.
There's one other question. It says that one clarification required. Do you think that the principles of storytelling can help beyond pitching, and it can help in developing business communication also within the team?
Of course. See, I only gave the storytelling, which was like what you might require in a business here. But storytelling can be like a very small aspect. It's a very important aspect in any life, in any form. I think even as our ancestral like people who are basically hunters and gatherers, the way they would work is they would light fire and actually just talk storytelling. So we've been doing storytelling since then. So obviously it's the one thing that has carried on for like hundreds and thousands of years. The only thing that you have to realize is that within your business team, right, this storytelling that we spoke about can help your team also understand your product and business better. So you can use this as a training manual also, so that your team knows that, okay, what are we talking about? You can use it as a way to explain your vision to your own employees. That is there. And then your employees can then use that as a mode to explain it to their friends, family, customers, whoever they want to do, right? So obviously this is one way of like this pitch and storytelling that we're talking about. But if you're really interested in storytelling as a human aspect, then there is this book called Story Worthy by Matthew Dicks. I highly recommend that book. I felt it was, I'll just write it down in the chat as well. Which chat do I write it? There's no chat for me to write, right?
It shows. Anyways, I'll circulate this.
Okay. So, Story Worthy, Matthew Dicks. So if you want to write about like this thing, you should just ask. You should just read this book if you're interested in storytelling as a whole, because I feel that is a very powerful way of like showing a story. Because I think in general about storytelling, right? I'll just give you a couple of cents here. Any day you have hundreds of instances that happen to you, which have a story arc. You could be feeling certain way before, you could be in a certain situation before, and suddenly that story has taken you to be in a certain way, right? And that could be a very small moment in your life. Like if you have children, then your child might have said something that you never imagined that for them to say, and that changed the thought that you have. So we have stories like all through this. The ones that we consider stories are actually, when we talk about a drunken story somewhere in a bar or something, right? Those are called anecdotes. Those are different from a story. A story is when it needs to have a development in your life. It needs to change you in a fundamental way. It needs to have an arc that I was this certain way before and I am this like this today. And that is a story of an individual when they're explaining in a storytelling format, right? That I used to be this way and I've turned this way, or this happened to me and this was a change that happened. So it has a 5-second change, that moment in life. And that is what storytelling is. You will observe this actually in this book very well. And you'll see a lot of examples of storytelling also in that. what we are talking today is storytelling only with respect to a business, to create a story for your own business, because this business is not an individual. It does not have an identity a lot of times. So it needs to have somebody else create that identity for it.
One last question that I can see is,
Yes.
Is it possible to convert this pitch to an elevator pitch?
Yes, of course. Like the same things that I told you, right? Problem, market, solution, differences, money, progress, credentials. You can just write that in 1 minute and also share the same thing. Like it's again elimination of words, right? Like if I had to give you a 1 minute elevator pitch of the same story that I was telling about FT Cash or my own business, I would just say there's 60 plus million micro merchants in the country. Or like even if I have like just less than 1 minute, I just have somebody's time to say that, okay, like I'm saying them hi and I have to convert that, right? I'll just say we empower 60 plus million micro merchants in India with the power of financial inclusion. And we have impacted, we have an INR, we have a AUM of $400 million today. We have a 360 member team working across West and South of India. And we have been awarded by so and so. Like if I had to say something like that. Now that's like within 10, 15, 20 seconds, I can say this. So again, what you can do is create 7 or 8 sentences, 1-line sentences for each of the 7 formats that we discussed today. And when you're in a different pitch, right, you can just choose to either combine the two sentences, saying that, like again, in my experience, my format, that if I had to combine the problem and the market opportunity, right, I can say that there are 60 plus million micro merchants today who don't have access to capital. It's a $300 billion industry that is waiting to be disrupted. FT Cash is solving that problem of access to capital by creating a digital lending platform solution for these merchants. We charge these merchants 32% interest, and we earn 9% on every loan. And that makes us, and we have progressed to about 400 crores of AUM today. We are a $360 million, 360 member team across West and South of India. Our team comes from like so and so background. And that within 1 minute, I've been able to tell you the entire pitch that I would have taken you 3 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes to do. Right? So you can see, I believe work expands as time expands, and your pitch also expands as time expands. So the same pitch you can give for 15 minutes. Sometimes there will be competitions or places that will ask you to give it in 10 minutes. Somebody will ask you to give it in 5 minutes. Somebody will ask you to give it in 1 minute. It's just elimination of words at the end of it. You have to figure out that this is the absolute important sentence that I need to speak, that needs to convey my message. This is my message that I need to convey. When you keep doing that, right, elimination, you will have one sentence out every of these 7 points, and that is all. That is all you need also.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Vaibhav, for this wonderful session. I'm sure the startups have benefited a lot. And I'm sure we'll be getting follow-up questions from the startups.
Sure
I
thing.
will keep sending those to you.
Okay, perfect.
Oh, thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
For your
Thanks
time
a lot.
today.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.